For more than 60 years under the spotlight, Mick Jagger has been more than just the lead singer of the Rolling Stones. He has been a cultural phenomenon the entire world has sought to decipher. From his unmistakable dance moves to his defiant presence, Jagger has built a meticulously crafted public image down to the finest detail. In the public eye, he is the man untouched by time, the embodiment of the freewheeling rock and roll lifestyle, and a shrewd music businessman. Yet it is precisely this perfection in preserving his image that has created an invisible distance between the icon Mick Jagger and the man behind it. For decades, the public saw only what he wanted them to see, turning rumors, suspicions of internal fractures, and hidden aspects of his private life into scattered pieces of a puzzle that no one could truly verify. Recently, Jagger's changing approach to confronting his past has surprised fans. Through direct reflections and long-delayed confirmations of events once concealed, he seems to be deliberately lowering the mask. Mick Jagger is no longer trying to maintain the appearance of a flawless legend. Instead, he has begun to sketch a more complex portrait, that of a man who has paid a heavy price for fame, who has had to manage personal tragedies, and most importantly, who has endured pressures the public never truly understood. This is no longer the story of a rock star, but the personal testimony of someone who has traveled through every peak and abyss of fame. If the Rolling Stones is an empire, then Mick Jagger and Keith Richards are the two architects who built it with blood, sweat, and irreconcilable disagreements. This is not merely a musical partnership, it is a marriage that has lasted for more than 60 years. A relationship Jagger has always been most reluctant to discuss because it is far too complex to be condensed into a few interview answers. It all began in 1961, when a shared passion for American rhythm and blues records, considered rare treasures in Britain at the time, brought them together. Yet behind the timeless hits lies a harsh truth. This may have been the most difficult relationship of Jagger's life. He has admitted that working alongside someone like Keith Richards was never easy, particularly when that partner was consumed by self-destruction and an extreme disregard for responsibility. During the 1970s, as addiction swept through the band, Jagger watched his closest collaborator gradually lose himself. He described the experience of working beside a severe addict as an awful ordeal. It was like a low-pressure system affecting everyone around it. Where Jagger, always sober and responsible, stood by helplessly because he understood that no one possessed the power to change Keith Richards at that point in time. The emotional distance between them was also paradoxical. Despite sharing the stage thousands of times, Jagger admitted that they almost never spoke directly about the wounds or pain each was carrying. It was a carefully maintained silence characteristic of men from an older British generation. Their conflicts were also clashes of philosophy. Richards saw himself as the guardian of authentic rock music, resisting commercialization, while Jagger accepted the role of managing the business machine. He was the one making strategic decisions, transforming the Rolling Stones into a sustainable financial empire. Richards may have despised that pragmatism, but it was Jagger who saved the band from economic collapse. They were like opposite poles of a magnet, constantly drawn together in art while endlessly pushing each other away in their views on life. If you ask Mick Jagger about the 1960s, he will not speak of flowers in people's hair or ideals of peace and love. He will fall silent and stare into the distance because, in his mind, the 1960s ended in blood and betrayal at Altamont on a cold day in December 1969. To the world, Altamont represented the collapse of an era and the death of idealism. But to Mick Jagger, Altamont was a personal tragedy, a scar that never healed. When the band hired the notorious Hells Angels motorcycle gang as security, they could never have imagined they were inviting the devil into their home. Chaos escalated so rapidly that no one could control it. The stage was surrounded by anger, and suffocating tension engulfed 300,000 spectators. At the moment 18-year-old Meredith Hunter was stabbed to death in front of the cameras, Mick Jagger was singing. He stood there in a glittering outfit, confronted by raw brutality. His music, created to liberate people, had become the soundtrack to a killing. Jagger's shock was not merely a fleeting fear. it was the collapse of an illusion of power. He realized he could not control the monster he had helped create, the crowd. But the tragedy did not end there. The more frightening truth, which Jagger would only come to understand many years later, was that he had narrowly escaped an assassination plot. The Hells Angels, offended by Jagger's statements following the riot, secretly planned revenge. They targeted his home in the Hamptons, preparing to carry out a brutal act against the singer who had dared to criticize them. Fate saved Jagger in the most unbelievable way. A violent storm swept in and thwarted the attackers' plan. When he learned the truth, Jagger could not help but tremble. He realized that fame, the name Mick Jagger that he had worked so hard to build, brought not only wealth and admiration, but also made him a target for dark forces beyond the control of any star. Public status was not a crown, but a dangerous burden. He understood that at the highest level of fame, a person becomes profoundly alone, and sometimes a single mistake in judgment can turn everything brilliant into ashes on a fateful afternoon. Mick Jagger emerged from remarkably humble beginnings. Born in 1943 in Kent, into a family where his father was a respected education teacher, his childhood was shaped by discipline and self-reliance. It was a world of evenings spent together, where music was not a career but a natural bond within the family. From that disciplined environment, Jagger learned the instincts of an artist, how to create his own enjoyment, how to observe from a distance, and above all, how to understand that behind every smile lies necessary hard work. But when he arrived in the United States in 1964, that boy from Kent experienced a deeply unsettling culture shock. While New York welcomed the band with warmth and the promise of a musical sanctuary, other parts of America revealed a distorted and brutal face he had never imagined. He toured regions where racial discrimination was no longer a concept found in books, but a violent reality unfolding before his eyes. Jagger witnessed black blues musicians, the very people who had directly inspired the music of the Rolling Stones, forced to lower their heads, use back entrances, and endure contempt from the very society that had appropriated their melodies. For a young Englishman, this contrast left a profound wound. He realized that the music he was pursuing, music filled with vitality and freedom, had been born within a society that was mistreating the very people who created it. Disappointment like this never left him. Jagger never romanticized America. He viewed it through skeptical, even bitter eyes. He understood that culture is not always beautiful. He began to see music not merely as art, but as a struggle against injustice. Those experiences left a permanent mark on his soul, giving him a harsher perspective. He started to recognize the cracks, the hypocrisy, and the deep divisions within America itself. Unintentionally, this helped shape his later rock and roll identity, one defined by powerful resistance, sharp awareness, and a constant suspicion of anything labeled a paradise. When people speak of writing songs that defined an entire generation, they often imagine moments of inspiration, where creativity strikes like lightning in the middle of the night. But for Mick Jagger, reality was far more straightforward, and in some ways, much more mundane. He was not the type of artist who sat waiting for a muse to arrive. He was a skilled craftsman, a tireless worker in his own musical workshop. Jagger insists that great songs are rarely born from romantic inspiration, but from relentless work habits, persistence, and iron discipline. Take Satisfaction, the anthem of rock music, as an example. It was not written atop a mountain or during a moment of spiritual stillness. It came into existence beside a swimming pool in Florida, amid exhausting tour schedules, under the scorching sun and the noise of fame. It emerged through the repetition of ideas, through refining every lyric, until it carried the greatest possible impact. For Jagger, songwriting is a matter of productivity. During lengthy tours, when emotions are worn down by constant travel and the pressure of crowds, he still forced himself to write. It was the continual interaction with audiences, seeing thousands upon thousands of faces respond to every rhythm, that became the energy sustaining his creativity. He viewed music as a living organism requiring daily care, not as a gift falling from the heavens. However, that discipline also brought painful lessons about maturity. Jagger does not hesitate to question his own legacy. He acknowledges the complexity of songs that have sparked intense controversy, such as Brown Sugar. It was not an innocent song, but a product of an earlier era, an era when cultural awareness had yet to fully awaken. Looking back, he chooses to confront it with clarity rather than stubbornly defend it. The decision to stop performing the song live was a courageous act. It demonstrated that Jagger no longer hides behind the image of the artist who can never be wrong. He accepts that the world has changed, and that he, as a creator, must change as well if he is not to become a relic out of place in a new age. In the memories of early fans, Brian Jones was not merely a member of the Rolling Stones. He was the founder, the poetic soul, and the figure whose romantic charisma shaped the band's original identity. Yet behind the dazzling glory of those formative years was a slow and painful decline that Mick Jagger became one of the most unwilling witnesses to. Brian Jones was a musical genius with an exceptionally sensitive ear, but he was also a deeply troubled individual who gradually became consumed by substance abuse and psychological instability. As the band rose to its peak, Brian's instability became a burden, a misaligned piece in a machine that required absolute precision to function. In his later reflections, filled with regret, Jagger does not attempt to excuse the past. He admits, with painful hindsight, that in their impulsive and self-centered 20s, the members of the band sometimes treated Brian with the cruelty of youth. They saw a friend slowly fading away, struggling to find a way out, yet instead of rescuing him, they pushed him further away. The jokes, the coldness, and the impatience they directed towards Brian now appear to Jagger as an almost unforgivable wrongdoing. They chose their careers, chose the stability of the band, rather than extending a hand to a friend sinking deeper into despair. Brian Jones's death in 1969, only weeks after being dismissed from the very band he had created, struck Jagger like a knife through the mind. It was not an unexpected event, but the culmination of a long decline that the entire band had witnessed, and in some ways, helped accelerate. His death at the age of 27 brought one of the saddest chapters in Rolling Stones history to a close. For Jagger, Brian Jones remains a ghost of regret. Every time he steps onto a stage, every time he watches old footage, the image of his former friend remains there, a harsh reminder of the cost of success. It was the most painful lesson Jagger ever learned about power. Sometimes, in order to preserve an empire, people become ruthless towards those who helped lay its very first foundations. It is a scar on the soul that, despite the passing decades and the cheers of millions, still aches whenever he looks back on a youth that was not only wild, but also marked by a certain coldness. After more than 6 decades beneath the spotlight, Mick Jagger is more than simply a rock singer. He is perhaps the clearest living example of endurance in an industry built upon constant replacement. Looking back on the long journey from his days as a rebellious young man in London to the present, Jagger has confirmed a truth many once questioned. The survival of the Rolling Stones was not the result of miracles or endless creativity, but of a form of resilience that extended far beyond physical endurance. It was the ability to absorb loss, manage endless crises, and remain standing through storms of controversy without collapsing. Jagger has finally made peace with the reality that he and Keith Richards, 2 opposing souls, will always view the band differently. The conflicts between the strategic manager on one side and the guardian of the spirit on the other were never mistakes. They were the eternal engine that prevented the band from ever standing still. Rather than destroying them, that tension became the energy that has sustained the Stones' empire for more than 60 years. Mick Jagger's decision to narrow the gap between his celebrated public image and the harsher realities of his personal experiences reveals a profound psychological transformation. He no longer feels the need to protect anything. There is no longer any need to conceal the mistakes of youth, deny the pain of tragedies, or maintain a flawless facade before the public. At the age of 82, Jagger has reached a state of genuine freedom. The state of someone who has said everything that needed to be said, faced the demons of his past, and finally accepted himself with all of his flaws and greatness intertwined. From the bloodshed of Altamont to the regrets surrounding Brian Jones, Mick Jagger has ultimately chosen to confront the truth, rather than hide behind the curtain of fame. He is not merely a musical legend, but also a man who has learned how to survive the scars of time. What do you think of Jagger's candor in his later years? Could resilience be the greatest legacy an artist can leave behind? Share your thoughts below, and do not forget to subscribe to the channel as we continue exploring the extraordinary lives hidden behind the spotlight. Thank you for joining us.